So, um, having said those things, I would like to ask Ms. Anglin, Victoria, if she would be willing to take over the meeting now and go through the agenda, and I will listen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I know you're having fun. Well, maybe not so much because it's raining, but enjoy Jekyll Island. So what we're typically going to do is I'll go ahead and introduce. Well, actually, what Mr. Powell did that already. So we're going to discuss today the E-SPLOST, which is a 1 penny sales tax that allows school districts to fund their capital improvements. The voters of DeKalb County will be asked to do that again November 2nd of next week. This E-SPLOST stands for the Educational Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax, and it's critical to building the future of the children or equipping community with success. Would either Mr. Brown or Ms. Pierce like to say anything before we continue?
Let me unmute myself. Thank you very much, Ms. Anglin. And thank you so very much for that introduction. I will have to say that although I'm flattered to be considered a commissioner, I'm actually just a school board member. So it's a little bit different. Our territories are considerably different. But yes, thank you for that. And Ms. Mallard is here with us this evening really to talk to you a little bit about that, the E-SPLOST. She's kind of one of those resident experts on that. And of course, Mr. Brown can kind of, chime in as well. So I'm going to yield to them to kind of, give you some updates on that question.
Thank you so much. From the research that we've done, we understand that that there's going to be some estimated tax funds that if we renew this new one, that this lasts for 5 years, and it's coming up. The last one is coming up to expire, and it would bring approximately 660 million to 700 million. Over those 5 years in the next time. So I guess one of the questions that we could ask is, in the past, or in this last 5 years, what would you say the E-SPLOST monies were, where were they directed?
So one, good evening. I'll also allow Ms. Mallard to say good evening as well. She's coming from a financial perspective. And then I'm going to provide what I can from an overall operational perspective, given that many of our operational key personnel were not able to attend tonight. The majority of your SPLOST funds historically have always gone to capital, as well as capital equipment, which in some cases includes school buses, IT infrastructure, and then you've also had repairs done to pre-existing structures that may not have been selected for new school sites. So if there are additions, new wings, and then also HVAC improvements and new roofs to many of the schools throughout the district. Ms. Mallard, do you have anything you wanted to say on that?
Yes, Mr. Brown, that's quite correct. It's really primarily geared for new facilities, renovation, construction, enhancements. It can also be used, for instance, to replace even cafeteria equipment, technology upgrades, infrastructure, refreshing basically the entire districts and schools, technology in terms of the computers, laptops, staff equipment. It can be used for buses, vehicle replacement, and then of course, anything that could be related to that are ancillary costs to construction would also be included in any of those E-SPLOST or SPLOST types of allowable purchases or costs.
Miss Anglin, may I say something real quickly? We have a surprise guest. Mr. Richard Boyd is here.
Oh,
We didn't know he was going
Yeah.
to be coming, but he's
Well-
here. That's the operations man right there.
he is.
Yeah, I apologize for being a little late, but there was a stalled 18-wheeler on 285 that had a bunch of us sitting in Dunwoody and Roswell for a little bit. But in addition to what Ms. Hanna and Mr. Brown said, over the last two SPLOST periods, SPLOST 4 and 5, we actually constructed a new McNair Middle School and 10 new elementary schools. We are just finishing up at Indian Creek Elementary School with the demolition of the old school. And then we have a number 11 elementary school that we are looking at in the Dunwoody-Chamblee area. In addition to the capital improvement projects, some of those that we're doing is installing new fencing around some of the schools, installing security vestibules in schools, replacing roofs and replacing HVAC systems, items like that. And as I think as Ms. Malyard had said, things like band equipment. So this past SPLOST 5 had $2 million a year for 5 years, so $2 million total for new band equipment for the schools. It also included new buses, new vehicles for facility staff, and as well as computer upgrades and small kitchen equipment upgrades and things like that.
Thank you for Mr. Boyd for that. That's an
Sure.
extensive list. Can you please let us know who you are? Just
Well,
we know
I
your
am
name, I'm
the
sorry, just in case anybody
yeah,
else.
I'm the interim chief operating officer and the director of design and construction for the district.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
I would like to just point out that Mrs. Pierce gave us the master plan. I have a couple of other documents, and I do have some pictures. So I am happy to share my screen and bring those up if if there are any questions around that sort of thing, because I do have currently a list of the proposed E-SPLOST disbursement, as well as the CMP Regional Town Hall focus on E-SPLOST and facility improvement that does list those out a little bit more. So if that is something that is helpful, please let me know, and I will, I'll bring that up.
Okay, absolutely. And thank you. That might be helpful for some people, who like a visual. Thank you.
Well, I would like to point out after what Mr. Boyd had just said, I did notice that in our neighborhood, we have Wadsworth Middle, I think it is. And there is a new fence did go up around that school. So that one is directly in Belvedere Park. The other schools that our kids here in Belvedere Park would attend would be Bethune Middle School and Towers High School. I do know, and I'm assuming that Peachcrest Elementary School was a part of the SPLOST probably in the last few years as well, because it was newly constructed and
That's great.
included. Yeah,
It
could you
was
talk more
actually-
about that?
Yeah, Peachcrest, I believe it was either the first or the second of the prototypes. It was one of the first two being Peachcrest and Fernbank. I think Peachcrest started first, then Fernbank. I think so. But yes, it was one of the very early ones in SPLOST 4.
Okay. Can you talk about initially Peachcrest was supposed to have 900 900 students, and initially there were they had to have the trailers on site. Do you know if that is still the case, or are all the students underneath the roof?
I think they're all under the roof right now. I cannot guarantee that, but I do know, yes. And it was amazing. It was supposed to be a 900 seat school, and that first year, I believe it jumped up to 1,100 with it being a new school there. But if I remember correctly, those After the first couple of years, those trailers, the population kind of eased down and the trailers have been removed. But I have not been there in a while, so I can't guarantee that that is true.
Okay.
I was just over there, Miss Anglin, not too long ago visiting the new principal there, and I don't recall seeing them.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
And
Um,
as we have
oh.
more people coming in, just allow me to do some quick housekeeping. We're about
Sure.
18 minutes in, and it does take people 20-25 minutes to come in. But really quickly, what
Sure.
we're going to do is encourage our participants, members from our community, to ask questions of our officers and informed guest speakers. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Address the question, and then if you would, mute yourself back to hear the answer. If you have problems with that, don't worry, I can do it. You can also go into the chat and ask your question if you don't feel comfortable with the mute and unmute function, and a member of the Belvedere Civic Club will ask the question for you. So let's just try to not talk over one another, and please do feel free to join the conversation. And I guess what I would do now is ask Mrs. Pierce, is there anything over the PDF that you sent me about the town hall meeting that you'd like to go over at this time?
Well, I don't know, has anyone seen the actual PowerPoint? Because it really speaks volumes for the comprehensive master plan itself. And it shows a little bit of all the areas and what they potentially will be getting. Some K-8s, some new schools, and you mentioned towers. There's a plan for that, or proposed plan for it. So I'm not sure if your attendees have seen that or not, but at any time you're welcome to show it, and of course we can always talk to that, or if there are other questions that they may have before we get to that, that's fine.
I'll just add that, just saying off of what you were talking about with towers, there's a proposed setting up a cyber technology and engineering academy. I guess that would be the conversion of what is now Towers High School. So that's quite interesting. Could you talk more about that?
And sure, Mr. Boyd, would you like to kind of address that a little bit more?
Well, I don't have a whole lot more information on it other than knowing that, yes, that is one of the proposed ideas, that creating a cyber technology school there, along with a career tech academy at McNair High School. Those are two of the more focused schools that are being considered right now, are the more focused programs. There hasn't been any type of course, any design work or such now. Just knowing that that is an area that would see a lot of growth in the future. The thought would be that both the career tech and the cyber tech schools would be something that would be of great interest to the students and to the community for the growth of the students.
And Ms. Anglin, if I could add to that as well, since you all are in Belvedere, one kind of exciting, at least I think I like to say it's exciting, possibility is the old Avondale High School, which is currently DeKalb School of the Arts. We are looking at hopefully transforming that entire campus into an arts complex. So that would be like a jewel, if you will, right there on Memorial Drive, right there in Avondale, accessible from 285, I-20, Columbia Drive, Memorial Drive, Decatur. Thank you very much. Yes, that's the stadium. We're not going to bother the stadium, but it's there if need be. Yes, there we go. Thank you so very much for that. If you'll notice on this map, that's the entirety of the Avondale, although I should call it, they call it the Avondale High, but it's a DeKalb School of the Arts campus. And Mr. Boyd can kind of, get into a little bit more of the detail, but this aerial view shows you just how much land we have available. And across the street there to the left, you'll see that that's a lot of property that we own. I didn't know that at the time, but I thought the fields that you see before that, those belong to Padea, as I'm understanding it. But when Mr. Boyd sent me the
Right.
aerial, that yellow outline is ours as well. So Mr. Boyd, if you want to add something, you can, feel free.
Yeah, so that is one of the considerations there, is to put a arts academy there. That, you know, we are still in discussions as to exactly what that will, you know, what the format will be there. I know there have been for a number of years, we've gone back and forth about having, you know, the phrase comprehensive art school has come out, and that's been talked. But yes, there's plenty of land there to construct what we need.
And also with that, the DeKalb Elementary School of the Arts is the elementary school, is of course over there on the Avondale Middle School side. It's
Right.
kind of on the backside of the downtown area. That would be, and this is not set in stone, of course, but the plan, or the thought rather, and we'd love to hear from you all as well, would be to bring that K-8 elementary school onto that campus, not in the same building, and then have the 9-12 for the high schoolers, but separated by maybe a magnificent auditorium, because that's something that they can share. So if any of you have a thought on that, of course, we're going to go ahead and post it. I don't know, Mr. Boyd, do you have the link to the survey? And it may already be somewhere we can have them.
I don't. We can get Mr. Williams to do that tomorrow. He was unable, Hans Williams was unable to join us tonight, but we can get him to do that tomorrow. I was going to reiterate one thing that Ms. Pierce just said, that these are not set in stone.
Right.
These are ideas that are under consideration. Even the idea of the cyber technology school at Towers, you know, these are things that are being proposed, and they will not be really set in stone until after the CMP is done and the board votes on those. And we've taken both board opinions and public opinions into account for that.
Right, and we'd love to hear from all of you. If you have an opinion, if you live in the area, or whether you do or not, we're open to hearing from you. The comprehensive master plan, and I think Ms. Powell has that as well. That's on one of the emails, I mean, we've been kind of exchanging. That you can go on, and if you're a community member, you can sign on as a community member and let people know your thoughts on different types of things. This is not just for people with children in the school district. It's for the community. It's for the business leaders, anybody that you know that has a vested interest in developing that area, or and any part of DeKalb County, any school in DeKalb County. We want to hear your views on any school. If you have an idea about something you'd like to see, solar panels, I mean, you know, just different types of things, we're open to all suggestions.
Can I just add that the DeKalb School of the Arts is a school that's available to all of DeKalb County via the word lost me. An audition. I'm sorry, an audition. There's an audition and a lottery, I believe. So that is a possibility for children in Belvedere Park area as well. Is there anyone that's on the call who would like to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm kind of, you know, out and about at the moment. But I had a question about allocation of funds. I mean, we're talking about, you know, a big pile of money. How, and if projects aren't approved yet, I mean, is it allocated by approved project? Is it allocated by geo, by number of students? I think, you know, from living in DeKalb County for quite a while, there's definitely a discrepancy between schools and their facilities from area to area. So is it needs based? I mean, how is that allocated out?
So it is needs based. Masana might be able to talk to a little more detail, but there is such a large need in the district that what we do have to look at, we have as part of the CMP, we had some studies done of each of the facilities. We've developed a facility condition analysis report. You'll hear us frequently, we'll talk about a FCA report or an FCI, which is a facility condition index, which is a scoring that is done based on architects and engineers that were hired as part of the CMP process to go through each facility and to analyze the condition of the facility. So it's condition of the exterior windows, exterior doors, the roof, the different systems, and based on the age and not only on the age, say like on a roof, just how well is the roof holding up. And then based on those scores, we're able to rank facilities or rank a particular project. So if we have a roofing project, we can select the 10 worst roofs or the 15 worst roofs, and then the same for different other systems. And then as far as the new facilities or any additions that would be proposed, that would be based on demographics and look at future enrollment of areas where growth is expected to really increase. And Mr. Williams can do a much better job of explaining all this. So this is the shortened version of it. But I know that they part of the CMP, they also hired a demographics firm to look at the areas that would be growing the most over the next 5 to 10 years in the district. So that's how how some of the new school projects are based. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yes, it's definitely a needs base, and it's data driven based on the information that's given to us by the FCA reports, and also by our internal facilities maintenance managers. We have a manager in each district, and in each region, and they know their facilities, and they know if if a mechanical system or say a cooling tower is about to be on its last leg. They can tell us that that is something we definitely need to focus on to be able to have a replacement project for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if you don't mind, may I ask Ms. Mallard if she wants to kind of jump in, or Mr. Brown add something to that?
I was going to say, Mr. Boyd, I think you covered it really well. It is definitely prioritized needs. That's part of the capital improvement plan, and it's a process that we have to go through every single year in terms of renewing our plans and determining the data, I think, qualifications that you use for assessments. But there is
Right.
an element of community input as well into some of those discussions. So it's not just external assessments or internal assessments. There also is some discussion, Mr. Boyd, correct me if I'm wrong, but there is community input as well along the way.
Right.
And again, I think Mr. Boyd put it really well, right, as it relates to identifying the prioritization process that goes into identifying which sites receive what improvements at what time. I know that may not always be easily identifiable to the untrained eye. I also understand, just by virtue of DeKalb, that people will say, well, this area is receiving this area, there's always going to be a very delicate balancing act for equity. But that methodology of identifying the facilities and the conditions of the facilities, in addition to, like you said, the work with the demographer of identifying the trends, the growth patterns, we would be doing the entire district a disservice if we were investing resources in the area where we saw that the population and the enrollment was taking a significant nosedive, right? So we're trying to adjust to where people are, where kids are enrolling, where babies are being born, while also preserving those sites and facilities that have served us well for decades. And it's just kind of, it's a balancing act. That's why we have to use a methodology, and through those community input meetings along the way that, allows or provides a platform for transparency, as well as, engagement, so everyone knows exactly where we're going and how we plan to get there.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Boyd, and everybody that's on the call informing us so that we can vote with, be an educated voter. Also, I wanted to thank Mr. Boyd for pointing out, and Mr. Brown, that there's some activity going on that to the untrained eye, we would not be able to know where the money is going. Like I was unaware that band equipment was something that could be funded. And also in doing the research and reading, technology upgrades, children getting the laptops that they needed probably during COVID,
Right.
were those monies that probably came from that. I'm just making a guess. So if you could talk more about those kinds of things that, somebody driving by who doesn't have a child in any of these schools, what would they, how could we inform them how this money is being used, since you can't see it?
Yeah, and there are a number of projects like that. Most of the capital improvement projects are very much like that. And I remember even, I'm actually live in DeKalb County, and I went to, when my kids were in, I think it was middle school, they were in, I went to their school meeting, and the principal described it as, these are the unseen improvements, the not pretty improvements that everybody likes to see their money going to the new school, but there is such a great need in just repairing schools. And we actually had a firm that provided us with an estimate of the costs that we would need over the next 20 years to repair the schools that we currently have, things that are wrong and things that will go wrong in the future with our existing buildings, and not even talking about new buildings. And that was in the billions of dollars. So there's a lot of work out there that needs to go into these facilities that you don't normally see. And then a lot of things that you do see every day and you don't realize, like school buses. We have, I think the exact number is around 1,183 school buses, but it's over 1,100 school buses. And of those, there are a number that as they reach 15 years, we begin to phase those out and buy new school buses. So some of the E-SPLOST money that that is spent is on purchasing new school buses at about a cost of about $100,000 a piece. So you can imagine, if we have 1,100 school buses that we're rotating at $100,000 a piece, that's a good bit of money. So, and just to note, these new school buses are air conditioned, and they are the, I guess state of the art would be a word to use. I was almost said top of the line, but they're not top of the line. Of course, we know those are the cruise buses you see, but these are good modern school buses that we're getting for our students, and that's something that has to be done every year. Band equipment, again, E-SPLOST 5 included $10 million for band equipment, and it is spent at $2 million a year. The school band directors, they put in their request for what they need to purchase. So it varies at each school. They put their request in, and that equipment is purchased and delivered to them. Vehicles for our service staff. We had some before we started buying new vehicles with E-SPLOST 5. We had some of the old yellow fleet that had well over 100,000 miles on them. We're now able to purchase put those aside and able to purchase newer vehicles for our maintenance and facilities guys to drive around in. Kitchen equipment is another one, both small and large kitchen equipment. Those are items, like the large well, even I'd say the milk cabinets, the cooling and warming stations, the kettles and things that they actually use to prepare the food, coolers and freezers, the large walk-in freezers. These are all items that we can use for SPLOST funds, and then even going in and replacing electrical systems, air conditioning systems. Those are also some of those things that you don't typically see, but is funded through SPLOST, the 1 penny sales tax SPLOST fund.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd. I would like to open it back up again to any community members that would like to ask anything.
I think Ms. Pierce had her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Pierce, go ahead.
And you're muted, Ms. Pierce.
Thank you. Corrected, go to my little reactions and put the hand up. One thing I wanted to add to that, Mr. Boyd, and to everyone, that with the school buses, we are adding additional security cameras on those buses for accountability. And that really, I think a lot of our parents are feeling very good about that. And we've got this new system. Please help me with the name of it, Mr. Brown or Mr. Boyd, that the parents can monitor the students when they get on the buses. They'll be able to, it's almost like a tracking system. What is that called?
GPS tracking.
Well, it's not GPS, it's some special name. I can't.
Yes, and I cannot, I'm drawing a blank on it also, but yes, it's a system where.
Edulog.
What?
Edulog.
Edulog. Yes.
Edulog.
Yes, Edulog. So something like that. I mean, so all of the, some of the, would imagine maybe SPLOST, it could be other monies as well, but we're trying to improve the ride and also keep it safer. And also we're, to reduce the carbon footprint. I think we've at one point in time asked to do a study on electric buses at some point in time. That may be, way off in whenever, but, we are looking and thinking about those types of things. So I just wanted to add those two things.
To Mrs. Pierce's point, yes, on all fronts, in addition to also the air conditioning piece, right? And ensuring that all of our buses are air conditioned, not only for the quality and the ride for our students, who in many cases may find themselves on 285 stuck like Mr. Boyd was earlier this evening, but also for our bus drivers, because that is another competitive market that we want to ensure that our employees are working in as optimal conditions as we can possibly provide to them. Because if we don't have bus drivers, that really does hamstring our daily operation.
I'd like to add to your point, Mr. Brown. I'm an aquatic physical therapist, and I see bus drivers because they have a lot of back pain. So hopefully those new buses will help alleviate some of those things that they have to go through. I see that Ms. Mallard, you unmuted yourself. Did you want to say anything?
No, I was going to respond also to the GPS tracking, which is the Edulog system.
Oh, I see. So I think the first question that we had was, where can we find a comprehensive list of the projects completed using the previous E-SPLOST funds?
So I know that Mr. Williams has one. I am not sure where that is, though. I will have to get that, and I can send it to Mr. Brown, and we can forward it to Ms. Pierce and get that out. But I do know that because he had, I think it was part of one of his earlier presentations.
Ms. Anna?
Mr. Boyd, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it is available on the E-SPLOST website, on the district's website.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I put a link in the chat. I did put a link to the E-SPLOST website there. I knew he had just generated that not too long ago.
And if I could jump in real quickly too, Ms. Powell was sent the questions because we weren't sure. Mr. Burbridge knew he would probably not be able to come, and Mr. Williams as well. So some information has been sent because they did have some questions regarding a few things that regarding the SPLOST and some other things and some of the projects and whatnot. So they were answered color coded, I do believe. So Miss Powell should have those.
I do have
Okay.
those. I appreciate it. And I will include the questions and the answers in a blog post on our website. You know, being hesitant to be redundant because many of you have already seen the questions. The greater community has not heard the questions nor the answers.
Okay.
But you know, you both have provided me with several links that I will be sure to include in a future post, as well as in the description of the YouTube video, so anyone watching this can go directly to it. I also have those on my screen, so if at any time you want to refer to them, I can drag them over and share my screen.
Okay, fantastic.
I had a question. I know Jessica mentioned GO bonds in her question. Can you, for those of us who don't know what GO bonds are, can we talk about what those are?
Sure, I can answer that. That's actually GO bonds are really GO bonds or general obligating bonds. They're pledged by funding that comes really from our general fund revenue, so general fund revenue sources. And I believe in our E-SPLOST 4 and 5, we issue GO bonds. We're not going to be issuing GO bonds for E-SPLOST 6, but they have to be voter approved. It's not something that the district can just go ahead and issue bonds. It has to be voter approved.
So that will not be on the ballot this November 2nd.
No, it's not going to be for E-SPLOST 6.
So I did want to just pop in here and remind our members that they have the ability to type anything in chat if they have specific questions. I do have some questions that I'd like to ask because we're coming up on just 15 minutes left of the meeting, and I feel like we would do our community a disservice if we didn't ask some more, I don't know, of the pressing questions that we've heard from community members. And although they may be more difficult, I think it will address some of the concerns of our community. And so one of the pushbacks that we've heard on E-SPLOST is the general idea of transparency. You know, the general community being able to find out exactly where their tax money has gone previously and exactly where their tax money is going in the future. So one of those complaints, now we do have the links to this and in several of the documents you've sent. There is a list of the bigger projects that have been taken care of. Do you know if there is or if there is plans to publish online a more detailed or itemized list of where this tax money is going?
Ms. Mallard, would you like to address that, or you?
I believe absolutely the administration is going to be committed to full transparency when it involves not just our capital project and E-SPLOST funded projects, but in terms of transparency around all our financial reporting for the district. I believe that we are in the process of working district-wide on dashboards and improving our communication and transparency in all areas. So yes, that is the plan going forward. And I believe that that is something that we are working on with operations. And I believe that's one of the projects too that we would be looking at in the very near future, to be honest with you.
And if I may to capitalize on that, yes, we are committed to being totally transparent with all projects and the funding required for each one, right, as well as the funding source. Not only E-SPLOST, again, like Ms. Mallard just said, but all of our projects within our CMP, and then discerning which ones will be E-SPLOST funded. And so I will say the CMP process is ongoing. There's still, town halls being held. There's still engagement being facilitated, and there still is a significant amount of internal conversation, amongst staff, amongst the Board of Education, and all interested parties, because once the recommendations have been finalized, then, that is when the true rollout begins to the community in a way that says, this is happening, this is not happening, this is being built, this may be closed, right? So that is not something that you move in haste. You have to be very methodical and clear in each step along the way. And that's that contributes to what I know some people are clamoring for, additional concrete information, whereas right now we have more broad categories by which we're planning on guiding our funding or our spending of the funding.
So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, I mean, you guys are talking about future state. Is there anywhere where we as community members can see details of how previous SPLOST funds have been spent, or no?
So if I would, I think, you know, we said that there's information like from SPLOST 4, 5, 3,
Yes.
2, that's available on the website.
Yes, actually, the link that I had put up, and I'm trying to get back there now. The link that I put on there is on the left-hand side. On the left-hand side, there is a section that says status reports and audits. And that provides the monthly status reports back to 2008 and audits of the SPLOST program back to 2008 as well.
Mr. Boyd, would you mind putting that in chat again? I'm looking for it and I can't find it.
Okay, I certainly will.
So, but so then what you guys are talking about for future state is something that's a little more user friendly than monthly links for the last like 10 years, right? Because I mean, nobody's going to go through all of that.
I just texted Mr. Williams and asked, I haven't got a reply back for where that was, but that is something that we can, that I know he has pulled together, and we can send that out.
And if I may, while you're looking for that, Mr. Boyd, I think in one of the responses, someone did ask about a comprehensive list of projects. And Mr. Williams did say something about there will be a draft CMP, including these elements published, looks like before Thanksgiving.
For the upcoming SPLOST, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us to another topic that I've heard community members bring up, which is the school board has approved a $2.2 billion budget, general fund budget for or I guess it's called a total budget. I'm sorry, I don't know all the terminology for the next school year, the 2021-2022 school year, if I'm not mistaken. And the SPLOST is also incorporated into that budget. Now, the last time the SPLOST was voted on, it passed with an overwhelming majority. It was like 73%. But should the SPLOST not pass this time, how will that affect the overall budget?
The overall budget actually, for instance, when you use the example of the consolidated budget for the FY 21-22 school year, that included what was called a capital outlay budget, which includes the E-SPLOST funding. If it's not passed, it would mean that I think operations and the administration would have to, of course, determine what are the funding sources or how best to address the needs in terms of some of the projects that we know we need to be able to facilitate, whether or not it's going to be other funding sources such as CARES or looking for, special revenue bonds. But if the SPLOST funding is not passed, it means that there would be a significant, I think, strain on the district in terms of being able to facilitate some of the improvements that are definitely necessary in the district. But it will be included in the overall consolidated budget if it's passed, yes, in terms of what's planned for the fiscal year.
And just to follow up on that, please correct me if I'm wrong. I feel that I heard reporting from the AJC that the state funding for education, I think it's called what is it, the EQB?
The Quality Basic Education, QBE.
QBE, thank you, acronyms. I heard that, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of the information that the community is getting, if I'm getting it, that state funding had actually been reduced, that population increase didn't warrant the continuation of those funds. Can you please tell me if that reporting is accurate? We know that there are many schools in DeKalb County that are overcrowded, and the answers that we asked in advance, the questions we asked in advance, the answers made it very clear that redistricting is not going to solve that problem. The schools that have capacity are too far away from the schools that lack capacity. And so other situations are coming. How is this reduction, if it's true, in funding from the state going to affect capacity building in those areas?
Well, in terms of the QBE funding, I can tell you off the top that our QBE funding, our state funding, really and truly does not cover, I would say, even up to about 40% of our actual operating funds, so our general funds. This does not even include any of our other funding, especially capital projects or even our E-SPLOST funding. So this is just our general operating budget, general fund budget. The majority of our funding comes from our local revenue, which is our property tax revenue. So in terms of the reduction in QBE funding that was attributed to the loss in enrollment or reduction in enrollment, we have to actually pick that up through the additional, thank God, the additional tax revenue that we're going to receive, even though we have not raised our tax millage rate, but we will have to consider how we would best manage in terms of the reduction. And that's where, if you may have heard in terms of recent conversations, the district had to go through what's called a balancing act to ensure that where those schools who were actually short of instructional staff or teachers to be able to accommodate the enrollment in schools where they were higher, we had to actually move teachers around to make sure that we were at least giving every student, equitable resources in terms of the instructional portion of it, which is what really QBE funds. We earn most of our QBE funding for instructional programs. Did I answer your question?
You did, and this is getting into more finance than E-SPLOST. The meeting
Yes.
is specifically about E-SPLOST, so forgive me for going off on a tangent, but it does
No.
help us understand all of the contributing factors of the general fund, right? So it comes from the QBE, it comes from property taxes, which is
Correct.
where we pay the lion's share of our taxes. And although the millage rate may not have been raised this year, it was raised by 8% in previous years, so it has gone up. And so, but I was looking at the projections and it was something like $680 million for the fiscal year coming from school tax. Then you've got the QBE and then you've got the E-SPLOST. Where is additional revenue sources coming from? Again, it's not about E-SPLOST, but it does help us understand the overall budget and spending.
Well, luckily,
Can we also say what QBE stands for?
yes, QBE is Quality Basic Education. It's an actual state grant, believe it or not. And the additional funding in terms of what's making up the difference of that 2.4 billion is actually, if you recall, the district got close to about 500 million in federal funding, just alone in CARES funding. So we have our operating budget is for our general fund is about 2 billion. And then we have with our special revenue, that's a little over $500 million. So with the capital outlay, we have probably about another 466 million. We have what is anticipated for our school nutrition, which is another federal program that is about $62 million. And that's basically the major funding sources. So if you were to look at where the primary funding, our two largest funding sources really and truly would be your general operating budget, your general fund budget, followed by your capital outlay, your capital project budget, your E-SPLOST budget, which really and truly, and that's where your major spending is. Your instruction, your state QBE, your local revenue, and then you have your facility improvements, your largest costs in the district, funding for personnel and providing instruction. And then, of course, maintaining facilities and providing for all of the infrastructure and technology needs of the district. As Mr. Boyd said earlier, even with facilities, you have constant repairs, constant maintenance. But then even with technology and infrastructure, you have a very short useful life. So even with equipment and technology, sometimes you have 2 to 3 years maximum on what you're providing students to use. So it's not to say that you purchase a piece of technology or an instrument for a student and it's going to last forever. There has to be some sort of plan for replacement costs.
This tax, it's 1% tax. We're just voting to continue it, right? And it's been going on since 1997. Can somebody talk about why it was, I guess, well, we know that you were not being funded enough. Is there just not enough monies coming from property taxes for schools? And that's when it started back in 97? Or can you talk about the history of why it started?
Of the E-SPLOST program?
Yes. Yes.
So I think the SPLOST has been around since the early 90s. And it's not just for education, which is E-SPLOST. It's also for all county and local government as well. So it has always been around in terms of a mechanism in which the state has come up with statutory guidelines in order to allow voters to make decisions in terms of enhancements or being able to prioritize needs for infrastructure for all government. So whether or not it's with local government, you have, your police and your fire. With school systems, you have education, which is a state responsibility, and a local responsibility. So there always has to be a means by which voters have the responsibility or the autonomy to make decisions that best suit the community. And this is why SPLOST or the SPLOST programs were developed years ago.
Okay, thank you for that. And also, can we clarify, this particular one is not only for education, it's a 1% sales tax for everything government.
Well,
Okay.
the E-SPLOST is for, yes, correct.
Got it.
In general,
No.
SPLOST.
Yes.
E-SPLOST is just
It's
for
education.
education.
Just
Yes.
for education.
Yes.
But so what are we voting for on Tuesday?
E-SPLOST,
Okay.
Yes.
education, special local option sales tax,
Okay.
special purpose local option sales tax.
So there is a SPLOST that goes generally to DeKalb County, and it is used mainly for infrastructure and upgrading, but then the E-SPLOST, as I understand it, is a different mechanism. And one of the things I find so fascinating about the E-SPLOST is it's renewed every 5 years. I mean, this last year was a little different because there had to be a small continuation, but, the last 2 years have been weird about everything. But when you look at the projected income from E-SPLOST revenue, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's an estimated $600 million to $750 million over the next 5 years. So when you're looking at an annual budget of about $2.2 million, this is a pretty small portion of it. Am I wrong?
Yes, it is. It's literally, it is a small portion.
And so the E-SPLOST funding is going to very specific projects that other revenue streams, such as property tax, EQB, sorry, acronyms, can't remember them, and other grants can't fund entirely on their own. So, you do the math. What is that? $1.4 million a year in a $2.2 billion a year budget.
Correct. Yeah, you have to keep in mind too that the other programs, for instance, special revenue, those are normally restricted for specific purposes. So we don't, with the grants, the grantors or the funding agents are the ones who are actually outlining the restrictions within what those funds can be used for. And in terms of education funding, most of the education grants, K through 12 grants, generally cannot be used for construction or renovation programs. With CARES, this was the first time that I think the federal government allowed a federal funding source for K through 12 to be utilized for any type of renovation or construction program. So we were fortunate with the flexibility that CARES allowed this time, but generally that's uncommon.
Well, let me just say that we are running just a little bit over time. At this time, I want to allow anybody participating to put something in chat, unmute, and ask their last questions. So please do that now. If you have one, you can email the Belvedere Civic Club always and go to our website. You can contact us that way, or you can just email us at belvederecivicclubmail@gmail.org. We'd be happy to pass along your questions to our speakers tonight. But at this time, because we are running just a couple of minutes over, I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Powell for closing statements if no one else has any questions. Anyone else? All right, Dad, do you want to take it?
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm having
Yes.
some little bit of technical difficulties here. I would like to say, Ms. Pierce, Mr. Brown, Mr. Boyd, and Ms. Millard, I think that you've given us a lot of extremely important, relevant information this evening. And we really do appreciate you coming forward and providing this information to our community. And we are confident that the information that you've provided will certainly help each of us when we go to the polls to vote on November the 2nd. And so thank you so much. I know your time is extremely valuable, and you have been very generous with your time to our community and to the citizens of DeKalb County. We very much appreciate that. And also I appreciate Ms. Anglin and Ms. Powell for all of the work that you did to make this Zoom meeting possible. Thank you, everyone. So, Victoria, I'd like to turn it back over to you to conclude the meeting this evening. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us. And again, thank you to Mr. Boyd, Ms. Pierce, Mr. Brown, and Ms. Mallard. We sure appreciate your time. And thank you to all who have joined us. We hope you are more informed and that you will go to the polls on Tuesday and tell 10 other people to go to the polls as well and make your informed decision. Thank you so much. I guess now the meeting is done. You all have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for being
Thank you all
here.
so
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
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 Stay safe.
You too.
Thanks.